fairies and death. Now bear with me, this isn't going to be a dark, morbid video because I have a story for you, an amazing story that was handed down through a family named Cullen in County Sligo in Ireland. Now it talks of life and death, of changelings and second chances, and that some people we think dead are living still with the fairy folk. It's truly incredible. Now, it was officially recorded in 1937. The events actually occurred a century earlier and were passed down through the oral tradition. So take a look at this and I'll see you on the other side to share some thoughts. A family named Cullen lived in a rather wild district lying south of Drumkeeran. While the children of the family were yet very young, the father and the mother died rather suddenly. The family were poor, but through the kind offices of an uncle, one of the eldest girls got to America, and soon most of the other children found their way there too. Two, however, remained at home. Anne, a delicate girl who was unable to immigrate, and her sister Mary, who remained to nurse her. Mary had the hope that her sick sister would soon recover and that she would then be able to rejoin her family in America. Well, years passed by and still there was neither decline nor recovery. Anne continued a difficult invalid, and Mary's patience was sorely tried. Her sister complained all the time, often refused her food, and was generally vexed and disthankful. One day, a wise old man named Sean Barton called in for a short visit. He heard the sick sister in her complaints and saw no apparent reason for them. When leaving, he called the healthy sister Mary outside and advised her to mix a special brew and to put this brew in Anne's chicken soup. "If she is your sister, she will take it," said he. "But if she refuses it, you be satisfied that you are nursing an elfin girl." Mary did as advised, and her sick sister Anne refused the drink with scorn, advising Mary to instead bring this brew to her advisor, Sean Barton. Well, this brought matters to a head. Mary declared that she had finished with nursing and intended to avail at once of her long-paid passage and rejoin her sisters in America. To Mary's surprise, Anne took Mary's decision quite calmly and changed her angry tone. She thanked Mary for her long and faithful care of her. Then she asked her to dress her carefully on the morrow and leave her under the fort close at hand, and then, after a time, to return. Mary did this, but when she returned to the fort, there she found her sister not ill, but looking very well and handsome. She was delighted, and both sisters were anxious to get to America at once. But Anne's passage had yet to be paid, and this meant delay. During the period of waiting, Anne entertained her sister Mary by telling her of her experiences with the fairy folk. She recollected places they dwelled and the names of the humans that she had met there. Soon, this strange news spread, and people travelled long distances to talk with Anne and ask her questions about their own young people who had died suddenly. Among those who visited Anne was a woman from Kilmorgan. This woman took with her on the visit the little girl who afterwards narrated this strange experience. The woman questioned Anne rather closely about her own boy who had died recently. Anne knew nothing of him and assured her that she had not seen him with the fairy folk. Anne's attention was then drawn to the little girl who had accompanied the woman. She asked who she was. The woman told her. Then Anne, in a thoughtful mood, said her sister is with them, the fairy folk. I knew her well there. She is a fine girl, with a gap between her front teeth, Anne said. This girl's sister had died suddenly on a November night years before. She had gone on a hurried message to a neighbour's house and failed to return. She was found dead in a cattle shed located near the pass between her father's house and that of the neighbour. If this story be true, and it was told by the woman herself and concerned the sudden death of her sister, it was indeed a strange experience and one that would not be forgotten. This account is fascinating, isn't it? And for many reasons too. At face value, it's just a terrific old yarn, and you can take it just for that if it pleases you. But as for me, well, I believe it was told in truth and earnestly too. And there is much that we might learn from it. At first glance, we see that this young woman, Anne, had been replaced with a changeling, and it behaved in a way which we've come to expect, which is typical of a changeling, if you like. It was sickly, rude, demanding, and ungrateful. Now, why the fairies take a healthy human and replace them with one of their own is still up for discussion. We have loads of ideas, of course, but one thing I feel fairly certain of is that it is a rare occurrence. I don't think fairies are taking humans willy-nilly all over the place and replacing them with their own folk. This is something which has been uncommon, and so it leaves us with many questions. How they choose which humans to abduct, and what they do with them, well, they're just two that spring to mind, but the truth of it is, we may never know for sure. But one thing which really tickled my interest in this account was the crossover between the fairies and the ghosts or spirits of the dead. Now, of course, this isn't the first time that we've stumbled upon tales which show us that they sometimes do come together, that there is a kind of blurring between the worlds, as we perceive them at least. We are fairly fixed in our notion of life and death and the things which might follow after death, even though we don't really know at all. But tales like this, told by reliable, intelligent people, show us just how blurred it all is. It's a merging of two great mysteries, the afterlife and the fairy. Or perhaps they could be one and the same thing. But how is it that some humans are said to dwell with the fairies after their passing, while others do not? Do the fairy favour humans of a particular character or nature? Or do they only welcome those humans who have fairy blood in their veins, who have come from families touched by fairy? Or Do they only welcome into their fold those humans that they have called for or collected at the time of their death? There are just a few ideas. I cannot wait to see what you think in the comments. From this experience, at least, we see that while her family suffered with the changeling, Anne herself was well treated by the fairies, as was the little girl's sister, who Anne knew well when she was living among the fairy. And although we're left with a lot of questions, I think this is something really positive that we can take from this account. Edgar Allan Poe once said, "The boundaries which divide life from death are at best shadowy and vague. Who shall say where the one ends and where the other begins?" So it is. I'm afraid today I've left you with many more questions than answers, but sure, isn't that the way of the fairies anyway? If you like my videos, please consider joining me as a special member or patron of the channel. Both help me enormously. Check out the links below to join me. Until next time, stay curious and be kind. Cheerio!